Good morning and welcome to the First Unitarian Universalist Church of Rochester. For more than 150 years, ours has been a congregation of open minds and loving hearts, celebrating many sources of wisdom and many spiritual paths. Your faith, your doubts, your questions, your hopes for our world, and your story are welcome here. You can join us each week right here online at 9 a.m. or access the video anytime after that. You can also join us for in-person social hour following the service at 10:15 in our upper parking lot. Coffee and tea provided. All are welcome. And as we are beginning this fall differently than hoped, we are still kicking off the fall church year with many activities. So a few highlights. If you're staying connected through your e-news, you can get all the details or contact the office. But a few different things. Small groups are starting up, including chalice circles, which you can register for online. And a special message will go out this week with a chance to sign up for a tour of our potential 10-acre gift property as we discern the future of our building and grounds. There'll be an opportunity for as many who are interested to see that space. And then 3 weeks in a row, we'll have outdoor in-person activities September 12th through 16th, each Sunday. So beginning September 12th, a welcome back picnic in the afternoon at Slattery Park from 1 to 4. And then on Sunday, September 19th and 26th, we'll have outdoor in-person services at the Olmsted History Center at 9 a.m. or 11 a.m. So a lot of details still to come about how all that will work, but save the date for pretty much all of September, the rest of this month for activities happening, and we hope to see many of you as we gather safely outdoors to start this church year. And a special thank you today to Alan Bishop for providing music, as well as Erica Beecher for providing reflections this morning. So glad to have your voices and your music in this space. Today's offering will go to support our church, its mission and vision, including half for our Human Needs Fund. You can give at uurochmn.org/give. And in the words of the Reverend Eliza Tupper Wilkes, minister of this church in the 1870s, may our faith in humanity and our message of hope and good cheer light our way. It's good to be together. Erica Beecher and Melissa Egler will light the chalice.
Good morning. Supreme Virtue by Lao Tzu. Can you coax your mind from its wandering and keep to the original oneness? Can you let your body become supple as a newborn child's? Can you cleanse your inner vision until you see nothing but the light? Can you love people and lead them without imposing your will? Can you deal with the most vital matters by letting events just take their course? Can you step back from your own mind and thus understand all things, giving birth and nourishing, having without possessing, acting with no expectations, leading and not trying to control. This is the supreme virtue.
Your heart for want of place, nor yearn for easy praise, but fit yourselves some task to do, and well employ your days. From wise and foolish both alike, we should all try to learn, for one can show us how to live, the other what to spurn. Be fair to people when they err, when good your pleasure show, their faults be quick to understand, in judging them be slow. But this above all else obey, it is the best of goals. What would you wish not done to you, do not to other souls.
A reflection on work. When I was in elementary school, growing up in northern Wisconsin, I had a paper route. I did pretty well getting up early, even in the winter, to trudge down the sidewalks, lug my shoulder bag up to each house, and drop off a newspaper behind a screen door or in a mail slot. Despite the early waking hour, I liked the routine, and I liked being able to earn $1. I took pride in my work. My budding work ethic was reflected also in my efforts at school because I could see the connection of effort to outcome. I worked in the restaurant business for about 10 years and overall loved the fast-paced, interactive work, good for extroverts. From a health perspective, however, I can appreciate the risks of late hours, smoke exposure, sexism, association with alcohol and very poor eating habits, customer demands, sometimes inappropriately, and differences in the hierarchy of the positions. The back of the house, hardworking cook staff, and more so the dish staff, were barked at to maintain a certain pace of tasks, often by younger, whiter servers and supervisors. As a nurse practitioner, I see continued manifestation of my work ethic and desire to serve. But now I see it with patients. I also see continued underappreciation for the efforts of more labor-intensive positions such as housekeepers and nursing assistants. I make a point of incorporating and expressing gratitude to these coworkers of mine and never minimizing their contributions, but I know I can still do better. In a professional position, working during the pandemic, many of the health risks are now different. Work, unfortunately, can be a huge source of stress, whether paid or unpaid, and it's time away from our families or activities that bring us joy. And in reflecting on work today, I remembered that I've said to my family many times that I've never heard a patient on their deathbed regret what they had done. They regret what they haven't done. And so my advice for you today, you hardworking folks, would be to appreciate those who support your work, continue to take pride and dignity in your work, but also remember to prioritize your own self-care and time with those whom you love.
Many thanks to Erica for prompting and introducing my book much the way that I would have. One of the things I've always said is, especially to my kids, you very rarely regret doing something, but there's often times where you regret not doing something. So today's story is a little bit about taking time away and the quintessential stopping to smell the roses. Today's story is called Henry Hikes to Fitchburg, and it is by D.B. Johnson. It is based on the writing of Henry David Thoreau. One summer day, Henry and his friend decided to go to Fitchburg to see the country. "I'll walk," said Henry. "It is the fastest way to travel." "I'll work," Henry's friend said, "until I have the money to buy the ticket to ride the train to Fitchburg. We will see who gets there first." His friend waved. "Enjoy your walk." Henry walked down the road to Fitchburg. "Enjoy your work," he called back to his friend. Henry's friend filled the wood box in Mrs. Alcott's kitchen. He made 10 cents. Henry hopped from rock to rock across the Sudbury River. His friend swept out the post office. 5 cents. Henry carved a walking stick. 25 miles to Fitchburg. Henry's friend pulled all the weeds in Mr. Hawthorne's garden. 15 cents. Henry put ferns and flowers in a book and pressed them. His friend painted the fence in front of the courthouse. 10 cents. Henry walked on stone walls. Henry's friend moved the bookcases in Mr. Emerson's study. 15 cents. Henry climbed a tree. 18 miles to Fitchburg. His friend carried water to the cows grazing in the grass in town. 5 cents. Henry made a raft and paddled up the Nashua River. Henry's friend cleaned out Mrs. Thoreau's chicken house. 10 cents. Henry crossed a swamp and found a bird's nest in the grass. 12 miles to Fitchburg. His friend carried flour from the mill to the village baker. 20 cents. Henry found a honey tree. Henry's friend ran to the train station to buy his ticket to Fitchburg. 90 cents. Henry jumped into a pond. 7 miles to Fitchburg. His friend sat on the train in a tangle of people. Henry ate his way through a blackberry patch. Henry's friend got off the train at Fitchburg Station just as the sun was setting. Henry took a shortcut, 1 mile to Fitchburg. His friend was sitting in the moonlight when Henry arrived. "The train was faster," he said. Henry took a small pail from his pack. "I know," he smiled. "I had to stop for blackberries."
Love is little, love is low, love will make our spirit grow. Grow in peace, grow in light, love will do the thing that's right. Grow in peace, grow
invite you, wherever you are this day, to take an easy breath. Breathe deep the breath of life. Sit deeply. Know that in this house you are named and known as beloved, this house of love and justice and grace. Feel below you the earth and its ancient turning holding you. And above you the sky, and beyond that the stars shining with their ancient light. Those things of which you are made, earth and stars. I invite you into this time of meditation, this time of prayer, first by sharing silence together. Spirit of life, source of love, God of many names and beyond all naming. It can all feel quite labored sometimes. The stress or the loneliness, the anxiety or the uncertainty, the ways the body and the mind are asked to hold too much some days. This Labor Day, as we again honor the dignity of work of all kinds, recognized and not, paid and not, and especially these days the work of those at the sides of hospital beds or in classrooms, those with low wages or those with little or no health care, those who have spent so much of their heart and soul this last year in whatever their work has called them to do, and wonder some days, was it worth it? What was it worth? What impact did it make? May we hold each other and the work we do and the myriad types of work with deep respect, deep gratitude, so that we renew our commitment to one another, to each worker, so that all workers feel the dignity and gratitude of their community through a fabric of support, which is not only gratitude, but also wages and benefits and appreciation, knowing that it is often the unnoticed, the uncelebrated, the unappreciated work that holds the world together. For all those workers, may we continue to weave a fabric of care that holds us all. We also hold this day those around our world and country, those whose lives have been shattered by Hurricane Ida and the trauma of past storms and the other effects of climate catastrophe. We also grieve the attack on abortion and reproductive care, not only in Texas, but in places all over this country, in law and in deed, rooted in misogyny and patriarchy and a history of control of marginalized people's bodies, and in this case, women. May we remember that one can be faithfully pro-choice, and one can believe that abortion is often the healthy, moral, good choice, and regardless, that we are in desperate need of building cultures and mindsets of consent, of agency, of power over one's health care and body, that the oppression of women and the denial of safe and healthy care be named over and over again for what it is: immoral, evil. May we build cultures and systems that root our collective health in justice and in love. Today we hold all those who suffer in mind, in body, or spirit in our own lives, in our communities, and our world. Today we especially hold Eric Egler, who for the last month has been experiencing severe neck and arm pain. After appointments this week, it was determined that a surgery will be needed to correct the issue of damaged discs, hoping to eliminate the pain. We hold Eric in our hearts. Cards of support would be welcomed as we hold all those around him in love. I invite you to bring the names you're holding in your own heart this day in joy or in sorrow, celebration or concern, and silently or aloud now in this time to speak their names. for all those names, spoken and unspoken, may we all be held in love and grace. These words of meditation come from Thomas Merton. Do not depend on the hope of results. You may have to face the fact that your work will be apparently worthless or achieve no result right away, if not perhaps results opposite of what you had expected. And as you get used to this idea, you start more and more to concentrate not on the results, but on the value, the rightness, the truth of the work itself. You gradually struggle less and less for an idea and more for people. Because in the end, it is the reality of personal relationship that saves everything. Amen.
The End of Summer by Rachel Hadass. Sweet smell of phlox drifting across the lawn, an early warning of the end of summer. August is fading fast, and by September, the little purple flowers will all be gone. Season, project, and vacation done. One more year in everybody's life. Add a notch to the old hunting knife. Time keeps testing with a horny thumb. Over the summer months hung an unspoken aura of urgency. In late July, Galactic pulsings filled the midnight sky like silent screaming, so that, strangely woken, we looked at one another in the dark, then at the milky, magical debris arcing across, dwarfing our meek mortality. There were two ways to live: get on with work, redeem the time, ignore the imminence of cataclysm, or else take it slow, be as tranquil as the neighbor's cow we love to tickle through the barbed wire fence. She paces through her days in massive innocence, or, seeing green pastures, we imagine so. In fact, not being cows, we have no choice. Summer or winter, country, city, we are prisoners from the start and automatically hemmed in, harangued by the one clamorous voice. Not light, but language shocks us out of sleep, ideas of doom. Transformed to meteors, we translate back to portents of the wars, looming above the nervous watch we keep.
Play is the work of the child, wrote Maria Montessori, one of many important thinkers and teachers in education. There is a favorite picture in our house that seems to display this. It's of Jenna, my wife, on her father's lap, clearly exhausted, drained to depletion after a full, half day of kindergarten. A half day of play can be real work. And it's true, we know those moments of a child deep in play, whether they're building or painting or running or bouncing, going around and around and around in the house and around, like it's some sort of track, especially during pandemics. There is an element of play that can end in joyful exhaustion. I think play, which was our summer theme, should be the work of not only the child, but the work of all of us. Play as the work of the soul. Play with many meanings, of which some in its etymology are brisk movement as well as leaping for joy. Like after a long day of doing something you love that leaves you lovingly depleted, a good kind of tired, one might say. Sometimes work, paid or personal or household or whatever kind, can be those things if we're lucky, if we're attending to it, if the conditions are just right, the combination where movement toward a goal is met with joy. That's the type of intention we all hope to bring to our work, I bet, to experience in whatever work we do, that we all deserve to find. Within the sometimes mundane or monotonous tasks of life and jobs, those moments can still exist. There are ways in which we can attune our hearts to whatever task it may be and find within it some meaning, some dignified, joyful experience. And of course, it's not always the case. There were two choices, writes the poet today that Erica shared with us. Get to work or take it slow, basically. And then there are these striking phrases in this poem as the pandemic lingers on. These have struck me. The poet writes about an aura of urgency and the nervous watch we keep. That's how we're moving into these days, an aura of urgency still toward what? Maybe we still don't know. This nervous watch we keep as grace and flexibility seem to be on the decline in society, and expectation and demand for normalcy and productivity exponentially increasing. To do more, be more, just get back to it. Maybe you've read some of the many articles over these months of the great resignation, some have called it, people leaving jobs or changing jobs, jobs changing in their format, their expectations, online, hybrid, some flexibility. You likely know all about this, more than you wanted to, from your own work life or friends or family or just the news. It's been like a pandemic pressure cooker in my mind, each of us with some similar ingredients of a global pandemic, but very different recipes, depending on where we are, our social location, our experience, adding to the amount of pressure that we feel. You start with this base of culture and society that values productivity and profit, a type of individualism that can equate your worth with time and effort working, clocking in, clocking out. Then you add in the other ingredients like the pandemic and civil unrest and climate catastrophe, and then all the small things in your life, which are actually huge, the logistics of work and safety protocols, risk assessment for yourself, your loved ones, maybe your own children still unvaccinated in full capacity classrooms now. A nervous watch I'm certainly keeping each day at masked drop-off at elementary school. A nervous watch indeed. And you add in all the personal things that stem from the political realities and systemic oppressions around race, class, gender, your mental, medical, economic, daily social health and well-being and situation and context. And you try to hold that all together. Pretend everything is fine. It's fine. It's okay. And you know what? Often it's not inside, outside even. It's not that there aren't moments of strength and resilience and power and joy and beauty within it that brings you through, that you don't have support of loved ones maybe, or moments that are good. But sometimes it can be too much to hold for the body, the soul, to not feel impacted deeply. That it's okay to say it's not okay. It's too hard. Sometimes it is that realization which is needed for our mental health and healing and well-being, and it can liberate the soul, the mind, the body to find ways as much as possible to dream and create and build something that serves us all better. Friends, you likely know there is massive change still happening. Record numbers of people leaving or drastically changing their work because the experience of this last year, for many reasons, was either unsustainable or unethical or simply kind of broke their spirit. Record numbers of ministers that I know have left their positions or ministry entirely, the same in education and in healthcare, and restaurant workers and so many low-wage earners who have always been under the crushing pressure of capitalism. Maybe you've heard the lament of working people you know or you've read about, of which I've been especially in tune to with working parents, about how impossible it feels a lot of the time, trying to not only navigate all the details, logistics, the evening online meetings meant to be convenient, but they find you everywhere. You can't get away. They're a blessing and a curse. And then you've got a child's cry or a yell or a fight in the other room, and you try to put them to bed between meetings, but that cry gets through the headphones because both parents are online. And who else are they going to call for? Because we have a culture, a way of life that demands our time and our attention and finds us anywhere, everywhere. It reminds me of the lyrics of the hymn we'll sing in a little bit, or Joe will sing for us. Hearts starve as well as bodies, give us bread, but give us roses. This liberation song was rooted in the women's suffrage movement, rooted in a successful textile strike in 1912 in Massachusetts, spoken by activist Helen Todd. believing in the necessity of both fair wages and dignified conditions for work. Wages for bread, roses for conditions. Years later, in 1968, the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. wrote this in one of his most powerful reminders of the dignity of work that comes to my mind each Labor Day. He said, speaking to the sanitation workers striking in Memphis, "If you will judge anything from this struggle, you're commanding that the city will respect the dignity of labor." He said, "So often we overlook the worth and significance of those who are not in professional jobs, those who are not in so-called big jobs. But let me say," he said, "that whenever you are engaged in work that serves humanity, is for the building of humanity, it has dignity and it has worth." He said, "One day our society will come to respect the sanitation worker if it is to survive. For the person who picks up our garbage in the final analysis is as significant as the physician because all labor has worth." He went on to speak about the issues of poverty and unemployment, naming the truth that the lack of employment was not the cause of poverty, because often people in poverty are working multiple jobs to make ends get even close to meeting. So I'm wondering these days, it's a litany of doom a lot of the time, but I'm wondering these days and asking the question, how are we making ends meet as individuals, but as a society? In these days when so many working people are wondering, how the hell are we going to do another year like this? How are we making ends meet as communities? How are we meeting and joining and connecting those spaces where heart and body and mind are supported, sustained, healthy, generative? How are we finding and creating conditions of work in actual places of work, or our influences in public settings and in public policy that make work meaningful and sustaining? How are we finding and naming the dignity of all labor without it becoming an idolatry, something we glorify as needing to work to become your identifier of worth? How are we creating conditions through practices of working living wages in our politics and in our living so that dignity is infused in work with bread and roses, sustenance for the body as in groceries and rent and healthcare, as well as sustenance for the soul, humane conditions that values people over profit? It can be simple, and I've seen this over and over in different places. People who are making the right choices for flexible working schedules, different expectations around what productivity means, or a kind congregant texting me back at 8:30 at night saying, "Sure, I can help, but stop working, Luke. It's too late. Practice what you preach." Touché. It means, how do we encourage a balance for mind, body, and soul? Because sometimes the most generative moments and times that help our work grow and flourish, whatever it is time away. Time to think, time to breathe, practices that feed our soul, like a stretch break, literally, from the desk, or in so many ways, a stretch break for the mind, the soul, with some space, some flexibility, some grace. Grace is a type of theology I'd like to see more in labor policies. Less rigidity, less glorification of production and the frenetic pace of industry, more humanity, more support and understanding of circumstances, more time for balance and breath and room in the mind and body for healing. The body needs space and time to heal and rejuvenate from strenuous labor, and so does the heart and the soul. And I believe we can do this. Other countries have on large scales. For example, in terms of parenting in the pandemic, an article recently listed, an article by David Ferris, said in Germany last year, parents of children up to the age of 12 could take up to 10 weeks of paid pandemic leave as a guarantee from their country. They added 10 days to their regular parental leave standards. Belgium created a paid leave for parents, and in Denmark, there were benefits for parents whose children were quarantined at home. This was standard benefits across the board. This is in addition to their already generous policies, guaranteed paid parental time off, like 18 months in Australia, a year in Germany, 16 months in Sweden, compared to what's guaranteed in the United States, which is 0. That's what's guaranteed. Now, it's not that that's not universal. There are places that have generous policies, it's true. But you've got to be lucky enough to work for a church like this one or a company that values work and labor and dignity. Because our social fabric of care, the collective care for health, support for families, care for mental illness, for those with much less privilege, a commitment to living wages and working conditions and humane treatment of people over profit, bread and roses, is tattered at best, frayed. So I'm wondering, is it too much to ask for bread and roses? Is it too much to ask for groceries and rent and medication expenses and time to nurture and care for a child, which goes far past just a couple weeks? Is it too much to ask for basic health care and the ability and time to think and breathe? Is it too much to ask to believe that people are worth enough to care for their wholeness, to care for their well-being? And even beyond just doing the right thing, maybe it ends up being better for employer, employee, community, everyone in the long run. Maybe, just maybe, instead of having to choose, either working for every penny to take the train to Fitchburg or foraging one's way through the thicket and the blackberries like Henry, that we could have a little of both. To find a way for our labor and our service to community and our neighbors to be rooted in love and grace and joy, and to do it together in such a way that we still have time for walking and for blackberries. Maybe if we work together a little bit, we can find some rest for weary souls and come through this time into whatever comes next to make ends meet. And there, in that intersection of our work and our joy, to have space and time at day's break and day's end to taste the sweetness of life, to experience the dignity, the loving depletion of good work that is celebrated and supported, to sit on a bench and share blackberries with a friend, nourished and ready to offer our gifts for another day. The hymn is As We Come Marching, Marching.
As we come marching, marching in the beauty of the day, a million darkened kitchen and 1,000 workshops gray are touched with all the radiance that a sudden sun discloses. For the people hear us singing, bread and roses, bread and roses. As we come marching, marching, we battle for men, for they are women's children, and we mother them again. Our lives shall not be sweated from birth until life closes. Hearts starve as well as bodies. Give us bread, but give us roses. As we come marching, marching, unnumbered women dead go crying through our singing their ancient songs of bread. Small art and love and beauty, their drudging spirits new. Yes, it is bread we fight for, but we fight for roses too. As we come marching, marching, we bring
wherever you're gathered, to raise your hands toward the sky or over your heart. Hold a breath of gratitude for all the workers known and unknown, paid and unpaid, for all the people and the places that aren't filled with an assurance of dignity. May it begin with small moments where we notice our co-workers, notice our community members, honor their work, and know that from that place, justice, wages, and hope might trickle up. Amen.